All right, welcome into Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
Well, we've got two topics. One of them is a health topic. You sent me a thing on brain rewiring and PTSD, and I found some other sources to actually throw some ideas out there because this is something I had been looking into as well. And the other one is I don't know how it connects, but you you brought up Lilo and Stitch, and I'm assuming the new live action or the old one.
No, bro, these Howleys, man, they ruined it. They don't know nothing about Mahalo and Ohana.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's
Well,
malo malo, bro.
if you want lived experience, Heath has lived in
They got
Hawaii,
none of the
so
kind.
so he's got the lived experience. But apparently, it connects to suppressing debate or suppressing
Yep.
alternate
Well,
opinions
yep.
in CRT. So I got some stuff on that. I don't know if I have sufficient stuff, but uh,
Just
we'll
just
see.
a little bit to show how we get here. And this isn't new. Um, Now, I guess to be intellectually honest, we have to start off with our biases. And not only did I live there for 3.5 years, and that's my happy place. So I was listening to Hawaiian music while I was cleaning and packing up and getting ready. So I didn't rant too much because boy, I went off last night. And the wife said, "You shouldn't phrase it like that when you talk about it." That's
Uh,
that's that's why one of the many reasons I need her. Um,
well, you got
but
to use the word bias carefully because that
mhm,
comes into this conversation. And us being two middle-aged white dudes, we're not
mhm.
supposed to talk about it. But guess what? We are.
I know Howley, bro. Um,
Yes, you are.
Howley is a white guy, but
Yeah.
um,
You are whiter than me, dude.
yeah, but it really more means foreigner. So if you call a local who's a whitey a Howley, he'll get offended. Anyway, um, it was also my wife and I's first date. Now we'd been together for a few weeks, but broke college students. We were just hanging out in the dorms, going to the dining halls for dinner and whatnot. And our first real date, go out to dinner, go to a movie, was to go see Lilo and Stitch. It had, just come out. Uh, and not only do I love the movie because it is a great story told well, and it's one of those, you know, few. I love things like one of the reasons I talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender a lot is not only because it's really well written, but I love family movies and shows that you don't have to suffer through as an adult. That we can watch this with the kids, and I too can be entertained.
Hmm.
Um, and the really good stuff, uh, like Batman the Animated Series, I would put that in that camp, even though when I started watching it, I was a kid. But even going back and watching it later as I was older, I was like, oh wow, this is deeper than I realized. Because you don't get the depth necessarily when you're younger, and then you grow with it. Um,
Which is funny because I spent time and these are more cult classics because they weren't
mhm,
mainstream popular, but I had to indoctrinate my son on my favorite little cartoons from way back in the day, and I
mhm.
still loved them even though they're kitschy and catch. The old Dungeons and Dragons animated series. Well,
Oh, that's a good one.
excuse me.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Um, but I'd heard things about the live action, and I wasn't even remotely interested because Disney has not even remotely earned the benefit of the doubt in general, let alone with these live action remakes. And then I started hearing stuff and going, is that is that real or is that hyperbole? And my son had a friend who'd gone to see it and was talking about it, and my wife
What's making
was,
real dollars right now?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so it's the movie is doubly stupid because I'll rant in a second about how they ruined the story and ruined the characters, but also this was originally intended to be a Disney Plus exclusive. Same thing with they did the same thing with Moana 2. Uh 2 also and 2 the sequel is it was originally supposed to be a Disney Plus exclusive, and then they said, "Well, let's release it in theaters." And it made almost $1 billion. And there's a good chance that no matter how much this movie is crap and how many people say it's crap, it's good enough, and there's so little out there worth people going to see, especially when it comes to family movies, that you're probably going to get a good sized crowd. And especially with a family movie, because it's not just, one or two tickets, it's three or four or five or six,
Well,
right?
isn't
So
it
these make
amazing
a lot
though?
of money.
So let's rewind to not even the movie, but the pre-movie. It made in its first weekend more than Snow White has made this whole time.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah.
it funny how if you don't shove things in somebody's face,
Hmm.
it's going to do well, no matter who the main character is or what they did to the story. Because the
Yes.
story is we don't even know. The problem with the Snow White thing is she told us what changes they made to the story, and everybody didn't like it.
Yes.
We didn't know what changes were made to the story till you go see it. Hey,
Hmm.
Disney, that's a better strategy. Just don't change the
Yes.
story, but it is a better strategy.
That's a good segue into the term. I've seen a few of the people I follow, like I think the first person I saw use this term was Little Platoon, and I've since seen some of the nerdrotic people, and I think even Drinker pick up on this, calling it slop entertainment. That's what content has become, is just slop. And I think a better term that I thought of last night when I was ranting with my wife is it's junk food. It is intellectual junk food. And this is where there's the physio connection, right? That, and we'll segue into that later. But um, so junk food isn't necessarily horrible. We had Taco Bell when I was down there and we went fishing because
Mhm.
apparently that's our new tradition
Yeah,
is we get
it's like
our
the only time I have Taco Bell ever.
get our
It-
get our yearly or bi-yearly dose of Taco Bell when I go down there because hey, we're running around, we're doing stuff. What do we want to eat? Let's swing into Taco Bell. Haven't been in there in forever. All right, and hope it doesn't hit us while we're out fishing because oh boy, then you're in trouble. Uh, but you have Taco Bell every meal, you're going to be in big trouble. But not even every meal. You have it too frequently, junk food too frequently, and you're going to be in trouble
I would say
physically.
fast food once a week is too frequently, but probably every other week is okay.
Yeah.
Depending on
If
the
it,
individual, how fit you are, how much you exercise,
mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think once a week is even is too frequent for really. I mean, I'm talking like the hardcore fast food, Taco Bell, Jack in the Box,
The really high calorie stuff.
McDonald's.
Yeah.
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 Well,
And,
not only the high
and
calorie, the low quality ingredient.
but you know what? I'm not gonna be like, especially some of the hardcore fitness people and influencers out there that are, secretly taking HGH and as we find out later. But you know what? Every once in a while it hits the spot, right? And you kind of need that palate cleanser, you need that dopamine hit, you need that, okay, yeah, one, that's the flavor I remember, and two, oh, that's why I don't eat that too much, right? But same thing intellectually. Okay, I've talked about the game I play the most lately right now is Helldivers. That is intellectual junk food. It is simple, not simplistic, but it is simple, it is straightforward, it's not complicated, other than the hand-eye reflexes you need to play a game like that. It's not really challenging you, so that's fine. But if that's all you ever consume intellectually, and not even, all right, that's enough of that. Let me pick up, you know, McGillcrest here and give myself a headache trying to read some more of him. Or wait, is that am I mixing up somebody? Is that the hemisphere brain
Yeah,
guy that
McGilchrist. Yeah,
McGillcrest? Yeah.
yeah.
Or let me watch this in-depth interview, or let me watch this, whatever. But even other, that was my first thought, and then I realized, well, let's not belittle video games. You can have some deep thought-provoking games. You've talked about Baldur's Gate 3, which I
Mhm.
eventually want to play. Of there's some deep story there. There are, some hard choices you have to
I know
make,
I'm more likely to do this than
consequences.
you are, but there's been teary moments for
Yeah.
me, in there. So
And that your brain needs that as surely as your body needs exercise and needs clean food, not, you know, jack in the box too much,
I'll
right?
even say with music, if you're listening to constant post-American Idol modern pop 24/7, you're actually kind of I mean, I don't have data on this because no one's going to do this damn study because it's too much money in the industry. But I think personally, it's the scrolling TikTok version of music. And you need to either take a break from music and listen to an audiobook or a podcast or whatever your choice, or listen to really good mentally stimulating music, so like some Mozart or some Bach, or my preference is really good heavy metal because it actually has stimulating discord that makes your brain work. Whereas pop, it puts your brain to sleep, which there are places for things like that. I mean, it's great for workout. Workout's a good time to listen to pop because you want your brain to be able to focus on the things like the lift you're doing or whatever. Whereas if you're just sitting there, I don't know, name an activity that doesn't take too much brain power. Or if you're driving, you know, maybe you can go ahead and get away with having some audio stimulation. If you're in the shower, a lot of people listen to music while they're in the shower. Give yourself something that stimulates your mind because your mind's actually that's why your mind wanders in the shower. Your mind is looking for stimulation in the shower.
Mhm.
So that kind of thing. You give your brain a break. Audiobooks are great. I mean, people should read more books, but if you can't read a book at the moment, listen to a book.
So this thought was prompted, this idea and statement of intellectual junk food popped into my mind when I was ranting with my wife, because she was talking about not just seeing what influencer types were posting online, but actual friends and people she knows on Facebook and Instagram talking about the movie. And one of her points was there is a major change to the end of the movie, which I'll spoil here in a second because you shouldn't go see it. It's garbage. But she kept seeing people saying, well, you don't understand, just watch the movie because it works. It actually works. It actually makes sense. It's actually okay. But she said, but I don't see anyone actually explaining why. And that's when it popped into my head. Oh, because they can't. Because it's intellectual junk food and it's all about the feels of the moment when they were in the theater watching it. And it is amusingly fun factoid I just learned is that koalas are really dumb. And one of the reasons they're so dumb is they have probably the smoothest brain of any mammal.
Makes sense, but they have also very few natural predators. So
Exactly.
yeah.
There's no stimulation there. There's no
Mhm. And
stimulation
they're
in their
not very
diet. There's
social
just
either. They're not,
they're
and
not
part of our big
social.
brain is our social being. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're making your brain smooth there,
In fact, from
fellas.
what I hear, they're pretty mean.
The males, especially
Yeah.
during mating, during the rutting season. Yeah. Anyway, uh so let me get into why this is garbage and not just not good. So now, and this is where the wife helped me with my phrasing is she said you can't say that and because it sounds insulting and demeaning. And I thought, okay, you know what? You have a good point. So let me put it this way. If this movie had just come out just now, I wouldn't have said, "Hey, let's do a quickie before I hit the road to have one in the can for you to upload," because I wouldn't care, right? It was okay. It's fine. It's intellectual junk food, whatever. I'll pop in. It's not my brand of intellectual junk food. I'll pop in Predator later and sit back and have some. Don't think too deeply. Good times. Um,
But it's a
but
brotastic good time.
it's a brotastic good time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd say one of my favorite lines, but we would instantly get canceled and demonetized. Bunch of slack jawed beep. Uh, anyway, but it's not in a vacuum. This is a remake. There is an existing product that came before, and so no, now I can compare it. And I said, so the analogy I thought of when the idea of intellectual junk food popped into my head, it would be like, all right, every once in a while we go to Taco Bell, right? You are never going to catch us saying this is the best Tex-Mex ever because I partially grew up and you completely grew up in South Texas and you live in Houston. We know what good Tex-Mex tastes like, okay? We've
Yeah,
had the real
I'm
deal.
stealing this from a comedian, but I cannot remember the name because it was one of those flipping through Instagram,
Uh,
promoting a new person moments. And he's so right. He said, if you know if you're admiring the construction of the building, it's not good Tex-Mex. You need to feel like the building is going to collapse on you while while you're eating for,
oh,
and now you know it's good Tex-Mex.
does a Busy Bear still exist? I haven't been to Laverne yet in
Busy
forever.
Bear
Is it?
is not. There is a taco
Oh,
place there, but I don't think it's Busy Bear anymore. I'll
oh,
have
that
to
was
ask my
so
sister
good.
because I think she said something about that, but she used to go there every Sunday
That
or
that
but
was one of those places where you weren't sure if it was going to fall apart, but you didn't care because
mhm.
Abuela was in the back making the tortillas by hand,
Mhm.
and so
Hey,
it was awesome.
it's not Tex-Mex, it's Mex, but when I was in Monterrey, after we made weight for our fights, we would walk the street and every other block was a new taco stand. Don't watch
Mhm.
them make it. Do not watch them make it. Maybe a band-aid falls in or whatever, but gosh, I mean, it's like 8 pesos for 3 tacos. And, you don't want to eat a huge meal all at once. So we would eat 3 tacos, walk a block, eat 3 tacos, walk a block, and get back
Awesome.
to weight. It was so
Yeah.
good.
So here's the real Tex-Mex is, and like I said, it's not s- simplistic, but it is simple. They don't even hide it. Early on, Lilo reads to Stitch the story of the ugly duckling, because the entire story of Lilo and Stitch is about belonging, finding where you belong for Stitch. And as he finds where he belongs, you have this broken family of these two sisters whose parents have recently died, and the older sister is trying to keep it together so the state doesn't come and take her little sister away and put her in foster care. Okay, so you have this, and that's where the ohana, comes from, which I already knew. And I was like, hi, cool, I know that word. And now everybody who's ever seen the movie knows it means it is Hawaiian for family. Okay. And it's a big deal there, because that is one of those places, like speaking of Tex-Mex, speaking of Mexico, it's one of those places where you have multiple generations who live together. Mm,
It is a very important topic. And for those just listening, I put up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and level
hmm
3 is loving and belonging. And if you go, which episode was that we talked about this?
Oh, I don't know. It was a
It
couple
was
months ago.
probably about 10, 15 episodes ago. We talked about this. And uh, you asked me about what people think now in my industry
hmm
about that. And I said we would put belonging down in 2 probably instead of up there, instead of having being up there a level higher. But that said, it's still one of the major needs in the hierarchy of
Well,
being human.
as you just said, one of the reasons our brains are nice and wrinkly is to deal with those social interactions. Those are complicated,
Hmm.
but also necessary.
Yeah, and Dunbar, he talks about the fact that our brains grew so fast that we had to basically start giving birth to a helpless being because we needed more room for our brain to grow as we became more
Mm,
social. It wasn't as we became smarter. We were smart as Neanderthals, and even before that, we were pretty damn smart. We're not all that much smarter than our primate cousins, but we're so much more socially intelligent. And that big brain that develops, basically all of your brain that develops after you're born, is around sociality and culture. And so we needed to pop a baby out that was pretty helpless so they had room to grow because mama's pelvis just couldn't take any more.
mhm.
And mama would die if she didn't pop it out earlier. And over time, we started popping them out earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier because
Interesting.
brain kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Makes sense.
You know.
And it especially makes sense for anyone who has held a newborn and holy cow, your head is giant. I hope you grow into that.
Well, and you said wrinkly, so let me clear that up for everybody too, from a biological standpoint. Wrinkles increase surface area. and surface area is important for stimulation and interaction. So it actually keeps our brain from being even bigger. If it was smooth, I would have to. I wonder if anybody's looked at the surface area of the brain and how big that would be if it was all
Would
smooth.
we be Megamind, or would we be even bigger than that?
Yeah.
Um, so
Or we would fall over from our head being too big.
uh, so they show you the message right up front, but they don't spoon feed you all the details in the original movie. So for instance, uh, Ving Rhames, Ving Rhames of all people plays the social worker, whose name is Cobra, a giant black man voiced by Ving Rhames, and he's the social worker who's taking on this case to evaluate can this can this older teen, take care of this younger sister, or do we need to put her in foster care? And towards the climax, there's this great moment after this disaster has happened where he says to the older sister, voiced by Tia Carrera. Anyway, I'm sorry, I got distracted. Um, it
Swing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Uh, go watch Wayne's World, people, and you'll understand why I have yellow fever.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, you can't see the logo, but my Wayne's World hat is right there.
um, they're arguing because the older sisters don't you can't take her away. She needs me. And Ring Rame's character says it looks like you need her more than she needs you. So it's telling you without spoon feeding it to you that this is a story about belonging for all of these people. They just they have different they're in different places and they're taking different routes, but they're all trying to get to the same place. Why is this so freaking annoying, and why am I harping on this? Besides the fact that that is a great message for kids, even adults. I've referenced before the channel Master Samwise. I think he was the first person I heard say this. Echo Chamberlain and Little Platoon have harped on this recently too, about especially with things like Snow White coming out. Of no, 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 no. Don't say, "Oh, you're overthinking it. This is a children's story." Hell no. Children, even more than adults, need good stories, because this is how they learn lessons. You can't sit there at the chalkboard and give them a lecture. Their eyes will glaze over, they'll go to sleep, and it won't compute. But you tell them the lesson in a story, and they will remember that. How many times have we talked about, there's this time with my grandpa, and told a story that fit with what the lesson, the idea, the philosophical or intellectual point we were trying to make. And we were 8, 10, 12 years old, and oh, you know what? I get what grandpa was saying. I get what
Well,
he was trying to show me.
so it's how memory works. Again, I think I talked about this last time. Medic, meaning, error correction, distinction, importance, and context. If you
You
add
remembered the
meaning to
C. Good
something,
job.
I remembered the C this time. If you add meaning to something, which a story that engages you adds meaning to it, you are more likely to remember the lesson.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and so the big change at the end of the movie is that
Wait,
in the
wait,
live
the big change from the live?
in the
Okay,
live
spoiler
action,
alert that anybody that wants to watch it.
if which you shouldn't unless you're making content off it, because good gosh. Nani, the older sister, willingly gives up Lilo to the state to be given to live with a neighbor. And they put lipstick on this pig by giving her this magical BS device of a teleporter, because aliens, right? So it's okay because you can come home every night while you're going to college. You can come home every night to see your family. and it's okay because mom and dad wanted you to go to college. So they invert and warp the idea of ohana to say this is what you should do because your life is what you want matters.
Oh, there's a deeper message to this. The state is taking care of the child.
I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. How could you miss that?
Well, so here's why, because we haven't brought it up in a while, and I know we have some new listeners and a few new subscribers. So when I first started training as a trainer, and I was working at a box gym, and they put the photos of the trainers up on the wall, and they want you to write out some biographical mumbo jumbo, and they wanted a motto. What's your training motto? And one of the first thing to pop in my head when I was going, I don't know what am I, and then for whatever reason, the preeminent academic of our day, Dr. Thomas Sowell, popped into my head. One of the first things from basic economics: there are no solutions, only trade-offs. And I was half joking when I wrote it down, but then the more I thought about it, the more I realized, yeah, that's how it works. That's how life works. And so one of the lessons of the animated original is that sometimes you have to make sacrifices for things that are more important than the things you want. So their life isn't perfect. They live happily ever after. From this point on, ever after, they live happily. That doesn't mean their lives are perfect. There's this great epilogue sequence as the song a song plays right before the credits, and it's showing little clips and vignettes of their life together now that they're one happy family with Lilo and Stitch and Nani and the aliens who have to stay on the planet, and there's a guy involved too, and I won't go into that, but that's a whole nother oy vey. and, and it's not perfect. She's still getting annoyed at Stitch. He's still a little monster, but he's part of the family. You're I talked last time about the analogy of the house training a pup. You don't shoot him because he crapped on the floor. He's part of the family. You you train him and you live with him and you work with him to make it better. Okay, there are no solutions, only trade-offs. It's dog food's expensive. you know Dog hair everywhere is annoying, but you know what, then he comes and he crawls in your lap, and it's like, what, this is worth it, right? There are no solutions, only trade-offs. In the live action, in modernity, no, you can have it all, honey.
I just thought of a motto. I've never thought of a single sentence motto for what I do,
Mm,
doing it 20 years. And I just thought of one while you were talking. Your client is not your workout program.
mm. Unpack that.
Someone who you have preferred programs. You've probably worked on these things your entire life, but you have an individual walking through the door that, yeah, 9 times out of 10, 95% of it is going to be good for them if you've worked on it and you've done your homework.
Mm.
But they're an individual. They're going to have individual needs. They're going to have individual likes and wants. They're going to have individual timelines. They're going to have uh, issues in their life that they may not even talk to you about. They may have all of these things, and you have to be able to adapt and react to all of those things without being married to the program, because that's your program. Because then it becomes about your ego and not about them.
Speaking of ego, and that's how we get here. This is why I asked you to bring up some CRT stuff, because I found a new channel that um when I started hearing people talking about the plot of the live action Lilo and Stitch, and then I happened to this popped up, and he's not a huge channel yet. He's still under 100,000 subscribers. It's called Real Fake Wizard. I was like, you know what, this video is good enough. I'll subscribe to you, and when I have time later, I'll go and I'll watch some more of your videos. But so
Kind of
I
like the
don't
sex
know.
doctors. I came across them when they only had 100 subscribers.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So um I don't. So the reason I say that is because I don't know if he was being rhetorical and he knows the answer, or it if he was genuinely asking, how did we get here and why did you make these decisions? So Jason Scott Lee, another great. He was in a movie that wasn't very good, but it's a great Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. I think he's an underrated actor. Uh, and he was the voice of the guy who's kind of the quasi love interest of the older sister. But again, there are trade-offs. He's trying to, hey, we should go out, and I can't. I got to take care of Lilo. I got the social worker coming. I got the well, they completely emasculate him in the live action, and this guy was breaking
Oh
it
no,
down.
tell me it's not true.
I know,
Yeah,
shocking.
shocking.
Modern Disney. And he was breaking this down. He was asking, why would you do this? And again, I haven't watched his other content, so I don't know if this was a rhetorical question, but we know why, because this is part of the message. Oh crap, we have to pay royalties to Drinker now, but um, and it's
Nope, you
not
credited them
just
right there. You're good.
it's not just that it's part of the message. It is that these people live in such an opaque bubble, and part of that bubble is you aren't allowed to be a dissenting voice. Dissenting voices are not allowed. Everything that must be focused towards the message, and it must be affirming of the message. So because he was asking, and many people have, when you look at it, modern anything, politics, academia, but even art, is how the heck did we get here? Did no one along the way say, why are we changing this into that? Why are we doing this? Well, because that's not allowed.
Hmm. Speaking of not allowed, the person who's being currently canceled by the woke right, James Lindsay, says, sadly, this attitude is amply demonstrated by their rather conspicuous unwillingness to engage in debate and tendency to regard attempts of others to engage with them as fragility or willful ignorance or privilege preserving epistemic pushback. So there's your quote from Cynical Theories, which should be on the bookshelf, but I needed to quote it. Let's go to their own literature, though. That's what you wanted me for, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. This is uh Robin DiAngelo and forgetting the first name, but Sensoy is the last name of the other author. And this is actually the first critical theories book I read, and I found the PDF for free because I didn't want to pay for it when I was looking into this stuff first. Uh, all rights reserved or whatever. You come after me for the $15. I don't care. But dissent and words like that. I tried to do a keyword search to get through a 400-page book for everybody, but debate got me results because they're not going to say crush all dissenting voices,
Mm-hmm.
but they will say it in different ways. So uh, we'll just start from the first one and we'll go down the list. Be patient and willing to grapple with new ideas and difficult ideas. What they're saying is be careful, be patient, be patient, me and you, be patient,
Mm-hmm.
because we're grappling with their difficult ideas in this section. Ideas means to receive, reflect upon, practicing, articulating, and seeking deeper understanding. Grappling is not debate or rejection. The goal is to move us beyond the mere sharing of opinions and toward more informed engagement. So we are there to get information from them, not to push back.
It's Matt Walsh's "Am I a Racist?" and he goes to these struggle sessions where
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of you know affluent white women sit around and get berated by women of color. Yeah.
Yeah. Practice posing open-ended questions rather than closed questions that invite yes/no responses or debate. So this is in there training you how to be a critical theorist. In this section, don't invite debate. You don't want it. Uh, the limitation of these questions is that debate format does not leave much room for examining gray areas or grappling with complexities. Closed questions can also be answered with easy yes or no, which prevents a nuanced engagement in complex issues. So this is their nice way of saying why debate shouldn't be allowed. That one's not as important. Well, that one's not as important. Okay, so this section here is important.
Oh dear.
Internalized dominance is the question. So now
Giggity.
she's
Oh no,
talking about what we feel
not that
inside,
kind of
me and you,
dominance.
what we feel inside.
Yeah.
So feeling qualified to debate or explain why the experiences of minoritized groups uh, feel yes. So I think you are taking this too personally. I don't think that's what he meant. Blah blah blah. So those are things we would say. So debate is pointless. Dissent is pointless because of what I'm feeling inside
Hmm.
as a white dude, right? And keep in mind, D'Angelo wrote this, which she is the definition of white fragility. She
Hmm.
is the definition of white guilt. She may be feeling these things, but she's projecting it on everybody else.
And
Uh,
making a lot of money while doing it.
a shit ton of money. $30,000 per speaking event, I think.
Uh, I don't remember. I remember watching an interview where someone asked him how much, asked Matt Walsh how much she cost. And I don't remember the number, but I'm pretty sure he said she was the most expensive to
Hmm.
book just for an interview. It cost them to book her for an interview.
So this is in a section on white people's responses to what minority people say. And this is people of color are too sensitive. They play the race card in italics in quotes. Uh, we do not hesitate to debate. We, as in you and me, and all white people in the world, apparently, we do not hesitate to debate the knowledge of people who have lived or studied these issues for many years. So there's no point in debate because they've lived it and studied it, right? We have
Mm-hmm.
not. Well, except I've
Our
studied it.
statistics don't matter. It's their lived experience that
Hmm.
matters.
So debate was the better thing to choose, and now I have uh, critical race theory, an introduction from Delgado. Uh, oops. So we get it under existentialism. That's why I added a. There we go. Existentialism and anti-existentialism. Uh, Debate sets in when mainstream thought is beginning to see the validity of larger groups' complaints. So, because we're the larger group, that's when debate sets in because we are still trying to oppress the minority, is what he's saying in this section of the
So if we attempt to debate, it's because we are trying to protect our
system
uh
justification is the technical term.
okay.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
was trying to think of privilege. That's the word they use. We're trying
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
protect our privilege
Yeah. More
that
specifically, the
yeah.
system of our privilege, not my individual privilege, the
Hmm.
system of the privilege of name your, I mean, we have both white and male, right?
Hmm.
Uh, Because the point of the entire story is open to interpretation, the prospect of a productive public debate is diminished. So there's no point in it anyways.
Hmm.
It's my story. This actually goes hand in hand with what you were talking about the people on the internet. They had nothing other than you should experience this, right? There's no point
Yeah.
in debating it because I experienced it and you didn't. And in this book, it's on a deeper level. It's the whole uh, I have this color skin, or I have these genitalia, or I have this identification classification. Or I don't think trans was an issue with when Delgado was writing, but I'm going to add that in there. I have this disability. I am this age. All of these intersectional things that Crenshaw would have written about the intersectional oppression. There's no point in debate
Hmm.
because you didn't experience it. You didn't go through it. You don't know my feelings. I experienced this thing, and feelings do matter if they are representative of the truth in some way, shape, or form, right? So if I say something benign and you get butt hurt over it and you get mad at me, It's not on me to make you feel better if I didn't say something that actually got you butthurt and mad at me. You're the one in the wrong,
Mhm.
but they don't see it that way. That's where things like microaggressions and stuff come in.
Well, not only in the wrong, but you're self-harming by not having the um wherewithal to think it through, examine, and go, why did I feel that way? You
Mm-hmm.
know, you've talked about
Or even
uh
just to admit that my feelings are my own responsibility.
yeah.
It's the
And,
it's the
yeah,
you
that's a
made
good
me
point.
mad.
Hmm.
You made me late. You made me this. You made me that. Which
They're
sometimes somebody can make you mad. But
I
you better
mean,
have evidence to back it up.
I don't know why I hadn't thought of this before, but we had just been talking about abusive relationships the last couple of episodes, and these people are abusers.
It's
It's
manipulation. You know.
yeah, it's I'm sorry I beat the crap out of you, or it's not I'm sorry I beat the crap out of you. It's I'm sorry you made me so mad I had to beat the crap out of you.
Mm-hmm.
That is the abuser. That is the abusive relationship, and that is the language these people use.
Or
And
or
it,
the or the feminine version. We all know the mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
yeah,
I am feeling bad, so I'm going to make everybody else feel bad, no matter why I'm feeling bad.
and the reason this all started with a quote unquote children's show is because what makes you susceptible to this kind of ideology, this very shallow sophistry, is if you are not brought up. Interestingly, ironically, critical theory is not good critical thinking. It is really only believable if you don't think critically, if you don't ask the second and the third and the fourth question, and you get into that frame of mind if you grow up never being exposed to deeper thoughts. And that in a
Well,
way,
you just
this is
used
why
a word
Jack
that
Handy was so
transitions me.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just used a word that transitions me to the underlying principle that all these people know. Thank you, social sciences class or social psych class, because we went over a concept which is true. The concept is called pluralistic ignorance. And the example everyone gives, and it's I'm going to give it because it's probably the best example. Everybody who's been in a classroom, the teacher says, "Anybody have any questions?" And nobody raises a hand, even though probably the majority of people have a question. But when you look around and you see nobody has any questions, you say, "Well, I must be the only one." And so you don't raise your hand because most people don't raise their hand because they think I'm the only one. I'm going to be stupid. I'm the one that's not the norm, even though realistically, it's probably the norm that there are questions for the material that was covered.
Mm-hmm.
And in this paper, this is why this addresses your question about crushing dissent directly, because they know this principle from the Ash experiments, it's the conformity experiments, when just one Confederate deviated from the normative response, even by giving an alternative wrong answer, conformity dropped to nearly zero.
And again, to reiterate, by Confederate, they mean people who were in on the experiment. They
Mm-hmm.
were posing as subjects when they were actually part of the experiment.
And if you believe things can be socially engineered and everything is socially mediated, and you know about the Ash experiment, which all the top social science, social psychs that are influencing things do know because they're not stupid, they know that fact. So they know they cannot have a dissenting voice. That is why X being bought by Elon was so important. As Brett Weinstein would say, the magic number is zero.
Yeah. So that frustratingly with Disney, this isn't new. and it's really infuriating. Now, it didn't matter to me as much because I watched the movie, it was fine, whatever. But I I liked Mulan enough that when I saw the live action, even before started seeing a lot of the people I watch on YouTube making this point, I was like, hold on a second. Back to teaching terrible lessons. So in Lilo and Stitch, the terrible lesson is you don't have to make trade-offs, you don't have to make sacrifices. Well, in the original Mulan, she makes sacrifices. She has to work and work hard. That training montage is one of the cooler training montages, and we've watched a lot of classic kung fu cinema, and the one in Mulan's pretty darn good. In the live action, she's just awesome, period, from the beginning. And there's a great there's a great lesson there, like a double lesson there, because not only does she have to physically work for what she wants, physically work and work hard and work harder than everybody else because she's smaller, because she's a woman, but we're not allowed to say that, um, in order to be a warrior. But that hard physical work changes both her mindset and the mindset of the men around her. And that's a big effing deal. That is a great example of one, not just a good positive lesson that children need to learn, but the kind of lesson that's going to hit you more and deeper as you get older and think about it or rewatch it and go, "Oh, hey, there's something." And this is why you're doing what you're doing and why we harp on the psychological, but then also talk about the physical and why that is not a separate component. That is part and parcel to what you're doing. Um, oh, as an aside, one of the plot points that this real fake wizard guy was talking about in his video was speaking of the emasculation of poor Jason Scott Lee's character. Uh, in the original, because of his physiology, because he's a genetically engineered creature, Stitch is so dense he can't swim. He just sinks. Okay, and so they're out surfing. He falls off the surfboard and he has to get gat. Um, but because he's so heavy, Nani is the one who goes down to get him in the live action. And instead of uh, swimming up with him because she can't because he's so heavy, she walks across the bottom of the ocean to get out. And this guy was just perplexed and uh, this was one of the why would you do this? This is well, interestingly, that's actually a way surfers train.
Mm.
All they would have needed, because apparently they set up that she was a part-time surf instructor, that was one of her part-time jobs to try and help make ends meet, and that's a way that surfers train, because it is ridiculously hard to walk through water in the first place, but also they're usually carrying a big freaking rock, or big heavy piece of coral across the bottom. There's also a serious psychological effect there because you can't be afraid of the water if you're going to be a professional surfer. So they're training both. And they didn't even have the wherewithal to have an earlier scene showing this. She just does it because she's awesome.
Mm.
No, she does it because she's done it, because she has trained it so that she is physically and psychologically capable of being under the water and performing physically. And we have some deeper thoughts on that mind body connection here because I accidentally ran across something really interesting that, okay, don't let your brain get smooth by consuming intellectual junk food too much. but also there's a physical component there.
Hmm.
Perhaps I did. Were you able to get into this study and see how much correlation versus causation there was?
No, because it's behind a paywall.
Oh, poop.
And unfortunately, this study and one of them I wanted to bring up because it came to mind are not supported by my university uh,
Oh, darn.
uh, licenses. So, but I did bring up some, get up some other stuff because let me go ahead and bring the one you were talking about. Okay, so neurogenesis dependent remodeling of hippocampal circuits reduces PTSD like behavior in adult mice. I got through without stuttering. I stuttered on saying stuttering. Okay, so we did good. Okay, molecular psychiatry is the ooh, I wonder
I don't
why
even
is this?
remember who put this up on X, but I saw this and went, hold up, because I have a personal interest in dementia and memory because I have a disturbing family history of dementia and Alzheimer's that it terrifies me. Um,
Okay,
and,
so the gist of this is the problem is it is a rat a mouse study.
right.
Yeah, so it is not humans, but at the same time, this is the first step to anything.
Hmm.
And this is really new stuff because what I'm going to bring up is something from earlier, which kind of led me when I first was exposed to it to say, well, does this mean we can start searching for alternative methods for dealing with PTSD? So
Hmm.
basically, everybody knows PTSD is post traumatic stress disorder. Uh, and it's caused by exposure to severe trauma. And what they did in this study was they promote instead of trying to use extinction, with which extinction is kind of what you would do with someone who has a phobia, right? So
Hmm.
if I'm scared of spiders, it is a progressive exposure to the stimulant without the adverse outcome, and your brain will remap that into your memory to create what they call an extinction event, the extinction being the extinction of the fear. And uh, the problem with PTSD is it seems to be resistant to that kind of treatment. And the paper I first thought of was the reason why. So the paper I first thought of was oh, I didn't credit the first authors,
And this
Fujikawa
was
et al.
from, and this was from Nature in May of 2024.
Yeah, so it's really recent, and it's uh, Fujikawa and colleagues. And this is the other article that I'm referencing now is Hennings and colleagues, and this is not that long ago, 2021. So this is how fast this line of study is going. So we've got a 2021 and then a 2024 article where one was like, "Oh, this is hopeless," and the other is like, "Oh, we found this thing," right? So what they found, and this is also a rodent study, is that in normal rats that have had a bad experience or had a fear of something, they were able to use traditional Pavlovian conditioning, which is kind of how see CB cognitive behavioral therapy is kind of Pavlovian, but it's so we're going down that route, exposure, 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 leading to extinction. The problem is there seem to be two things going on here. We have a uh, a redirecting of the memory to a different part of the brain than the prefrontal medial prefrontal cortex, which is where you need the memory to be to lead to extinction, and it's going somewhere else. Uh, and I believe that was, let me look that up, to the dorsal anterior cingulate. Okay. You didn't see the screen change, did you?
Nope.
Okay, good, because I went to a paper I had written. Uh, the so yeah, so it seemed to be going to this other region of the brain. And what people don't understand about the hippocampus is everybody says, "Oh, that's the memory center, like it's a bank." No, it's the memory distributor. It's the person when we used everybody remembers the old phone lines where you would call the operator and say, I need this, and it would redirect you to that. That's kind of what the hippocampus does. And when it sends it somewhere else, it gets mapped there. And we want the medial prefrontal cortex to be engaged because that's also one of the centers of the brain, one of the major centers of the brain where we make sense of the world. And it's also one of the most plastic parts of the brain, which means it's one of the most adjustable parts of the brain. Again, this is something that is almost not even developed at all when you're born. Back to our previous conversation. This is one of the things that gets big brained as we grow. And so you have this bad experience, your cause of your PTSD, and every time you try to use therapy to extinguish this memory or to extinguish the feelings that come with this memory, it doesn't go where it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps going to this other part. And so we're seeing this rejection from your body to the therapy when you have actual PTSD. Now, this article you brought me says actually using the hippocampus itself to encourage forgetting instead of trying to extinguish the generalized fear. And generalization means something similar causes the same effect as the original thing. So like if you get bit by a German Shepherd and you see a Chihuahua and you get just as scared as if you see a German Shepherd, that would be generalization. If you almost got blown up by a mortar and someone closing a trunk causes you to jump behind the bushes, that's generalization because it's a similar sound and everything. And so what they're using is a different approach, actually targeting the parts of the hippocampus that would cause forgetting. Debatable on whether you actually forget it. It might just send it to a new place. We don't know. The brain is complicated, but that seems to be working. And in that paper, I wrote we had to ask questions. And one of my questions was, given that it seems the attempt at extinction of the conditioned stimulus in PTSD individuals was unsuccessful, could this study's information be about memory allocation give us insight into alternative treatments? And you just sent me one. So I'm just like, there we go. There we go. Because this is an alternative treatment as opposed to just trying to use regular cognitive behavioral therapy methods. Now, the interesting part that I think you latched onto was there was hypertrophy of certain parts of the hippocampal
Mm-hmm.
region, which
Mm-hmm.
you'll see. Let me highlight it here. Hippocampal neurogenesis, which I actually had to look up because there's a great debate on, well, so not a big debate in muscular science now. Is there hyperplasia or hypertrophy? And hyperplasia would be more muscle cells. Hypertrophy would be bigger muscle cells with more stuff in it. It seems we actually have hyperplasia of nerves, the way they measure this, because they actually send markers in to parse out how many nerves are in a given bundle. So that's actually really cool. But see, that seems to be what happened here. And I went back to McGuire and colleagues, Eleanor McGuire and colleagues that studied London taxi drivers, and there was actually growth in the hippocampal region in these London taxi drivers. And what, if you don't know what they have to go through, they have to go through this extensive learning phase before you're even allowed to drive a taxi in London, where you have to know every street and every cross section and every landmarker and basically the entire city, front to back, side to side, before
From
you're even allowed to drive a taxi
and we're
there.
talking about a city that was the well, it existed before, but Londinium when the Romans occupied Britain, and then it has grown since then. So talk about a rabbit warren of streets and side streets and alleyways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So the kind of the gist I got from this, and this may be oversimplifying it, is it's actually increasing the the muscular ability of the hippocampus might be the solution So it can cause a different effect. Like again, forgetting is a huge thing. I know what they're going for. It's just a suppression
Hmm.
mechanism, I think, because we never truly forget anything. Now, the second question to come out of this, and tell me what you think about this, because this is where my mind went. The great debate on retrieving trauma. Because there are some people that say if the trauma is suppressed, let it. And there are some that say no, we need to bring it to the surface in order to deal with it. That would be more your uh psychotherapy type approach. Whereas the let it live is kind of like a more modern, just I don't even know if there's a school of thought associated with this, but it's becoming more and more popular. Hey, if you can't remember it, why even bring it back up? Kind of thing.
My first thought is because we've kind of talked about, this stuff personally, is all right, figuring out why you do what you do. So, in other words, um, it ain't dumb if it works,
Mm.
is a good old fashioned redneck saying. And so if you have forgotten, but you're able to function well or well enough, all right, cool. But if you're having trouble functioning psychologically
And you don't know why.
and you don't know why,
Mhm.
well, then you may have to dig back into it. And
And that
yeah,
was my thought because reading these two things together, and again, it's rodent studies, nothing conclusive. We have to figure this out in humans as well. But as you said, if you're functioning perfectly fine, live and let live. If you're not and you don't know why, then that's a different kind of trauma. And we could bring that to the surface and then use the new technique. But you can't use the new technique unless you already have the memories in place.
the other thought I had with my own, rudimentary understanding of this stuff and why I wanted to see what you think here is because one of the things we've talked about, when it comes to physio stuff is, and I guess our sponsor today should be Real Fitness. Go check out the Real Fitness channel because there's good stuff there. I still think that's the best squat video on the internet that I've seen anyway, of a squat tutorial, both practically and theoretically. But one of the things that we've talked about before, and you've talked about on the Real Fitness channel, is that one of the reasons you do these things is so that if you do suffer a physical injury, you recover quicker.
Mhm.
You are better able to deal with it and to recover. And
Into an
so
injury strong, out of an injury strong. Yeah.
so one of my fears is, I keep flippantly talking about smooth brains, but well, wait a minute. If you are intellectually weak, if you are psychologically weak, well, then we make fun of the quote unquote snowflakes for talking about their trauma, but maybe it is trauma because they're so weak.
They've never flexed their brain muscle. Yeah.
In the same way that you have to you worry greatly about an 80-year-old who has a fall versus an 8-year-old
Hmm.
because your systems are your physical systems are much weaker and much more susceptible to damage and much more difficult to and slower to recover.
Hmm.
So in the same way, if we are making ourselves intellectually and psychologically weak, are we making it easier to suffer trauma and more difficult to recover?
Hmm. Yeah, and that's the interesting part of this specific one dealt with being able to forget dramatic effects, but we need to figure out what about that process in that therapy method causes that hypertrophy in the brain, or actually hyperplasia because it's actually developing new cells. Because if we can keep doing that, we can actually stave off things like dementia and Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, it's the memory hub of the brain, and if you can build that even in old age, I mean, let's go with it, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is you've you've ranted before about the problems with Mark Ripito, but one of the positives from him is the idea that no, just because you're old doesn't mean you should be sitting there with 3 pound dumbbells. Pick up a barbell,
Hmm.
you know, move some serious weight because that's how you get stronger and that's how you stay healthier. Well, same thing intellectually. Stop consuming intellectual junk and exercise that brain. So as a wrapping it up here and teasing for next time, one of the books I've got with me for this road trip is Martha Beck, who I heard on Williamson's on Modern Wisdom from a few episodes ago. I downloaded it and I listened to it while I was driving back uh, from the last time I went to visit you. And one of the things she talks about in that interview, and I've got her book now to read it and get more into the technique and the reasoning for it, is exercising your right hemisphere,
Hmm.
of making a point to every day or at least very frequently do something creative. And for her, it's painting. And so she says she has hundreds of paintings because she just started doing it because I need to flex my right hemisphere. I need to engage my right hemisphere.
Hmm. Yeah, and I would even go a step further than that because this is where uh, a lot of meditative practices come in.
Mm,
Not just the breathing. The breathing's a start. Is it's about inputs, and the right hemisphere, you know from reading McGilchrist, is about engaging your environment and actually being aware of everything that's coming in, including your own body. And so painting, yeah, is great, but it's still making something from your own experience, which is actually both hemispheres. Right hemisphere, it's about being aware of your surroundings. And I think awareness practices,
mhm,
get in nature and try to listen to all of the different sounds and try to be able to break apart the sounds and what is what and the smells and the sights. And that's a right hemisphere activity as well. Now, meditation is hard. Meditation to me is harder than exercise,
mm,
but I mean, it's worth trying, right? But just being aware, try to notice more things. That's a right hemisphere exercise. Just try to notice more things in a day. Listen to somebody when they're talking to you instead of trying to come up with the next thing you're going to say. That's a right hemisphere exercise. Even though language is involved, which is left hemisphere, you're still engaged in the conversation instead of trying to come up with what you're trying to say, where you're getting into your schema, which is on the left. So yeah, all of those things. So yeah, that's very important. Uh, and who knows? Well, maybe you'll get some hypertrophy of the brain. Maybe you'll actually remember something that you were observant of.
wouldn't that be wonderful? All right. Well, we will probably dig deeper into that next time after I've had time to read the book and give it some thought. I've also got McGilchrist, so when I want to give myself a headache, I can, read a paragraph of that and then set it down and go, "What the heck does that mean?"
Yeah, I
Um,
know you got to finish it at some point because I keep giving out books and never getting them back.
well, you know where this one is, and I'm
Yeah.
working on it, man. I'm working on it. All right. Well, we will see y'all. We will see y'all next time for some of that, and we might start getting into Dostoevsky soon here. Um, that's our summertime project, and let us know what y'all think, and if there's anything you want us to ramble and rant about.
All right, see you later, guys.